Hey, what is up, guys? Just as a heads up with this review you guys are about to witness, this was slightly scripted, not exactly really, because you will hear me ramble on a little bit. Really, all I did was put out a few points that I wanted to get across. There is a few points that I don't get correct the first time, but then I mention it, like, with the covenants. I don't mention one of the covenants, and then I say it later on in the video. So I hope you guys enjoy the review for what it is, and I hope to improve on the next one. So yeah, have a good one, guys. Hello, everybody. Guess this is my first time doing a review. Well, I'll just start off by saying it's obviously Dark Souls. Uh, if you didn't know already, why are you? How are you still confused? There's a fucking name and title in the thumbnail that says Dark Souls. Fuck. Okay, so we're gonna talk about Dark Souls 3, the review. So I have a little cheat sheet here. Don't ignore this. Don't look at it. So we're gonna talk about it. I have a few guide points that I just wanted to hit. You know. So we're gonna talk about the campaign today. So really, Dark Souls. What else am I gonna talk about with Dark Souls? The campaign. Okay. So in this one, you are experiencing it as a unkindled one. Instead of like Dark Souls 2, where we were hollow. So basically, as far as I can get down the campaign, you start off as an unkindled one that is trying to essentially earn his way to become a champion and earn his or take down the Lords of Cinder to become the Lords of Cinder. I'm probably wrong on that one, and I'm probably getting a lot of trash talk about hate and whatever. Okay. So what is the experience like? Well, if you ever played a Dark Souls game, you know it's pretty awful. It's it's a good awful, good awful. The game is very unforgiving. The experience itself is a very depressing kind of looking game. Everything's dead or undead. There's monsters. There's it's Dark Souls. Okay, if you don't know what Dark Souls is, I highly recommend that you play it and you kind of get the idea that basically you're basically in a hell. And I just said basically twice, yes, and a third time there. Um, what's the experience like? It is a very, as I said, unforgiving experience where essentially it's an adventure kind of game where you get to experience uh this world, and it's a very very well written world. The entire place is filled with nooks and crannies that you can't find unless you are looking for, like illusionary walls and even some things that I'll go over later in this review that honestly I I had to find out where they were by friends, guides. There was really no other way to do it. But overall the experience is good. You always had that sense of uh, relief and what is the word? Like it's like you just like finished a really hard test or something, and you're just like, it's over, and then you're still having to go further until you actually beat the game. Sorry, excuse me. But the game itself, what do I like about it? I do enjoy that it is unforgiving, and it really tests how patient you are, and it makes you actually have to strategize and learn every enemy you go up against. There is no enemy in this game where if you were to just try and go ham on him, you'll probably succeed a few times, but if he gets a hit on you or something, it's game over, guys. Like, I've seen so many videos, and I even have friends that try this, where they're just smashing that right bumper thinking that they're going to get the hit in while they're just getting smacked. And it's like, maybe on an enemy that's a little bit slower, you know, those bigger guys that aren't as, like, fast. But there's some enemies, man, where they'll just stun lock you because you're thinking that you're just going to get away from it. and just be able to hit them right after they hit you. No, you should be spamming that roll button or else you are screwed. Let's see. How tough is the game? Okay, so I'm not talking about the bosses yet. I'll get on the bosses later. I'm deciding to do that in a different kind of like subject within this video. But the game itself, for me, was not that difficult, honestly. I've really honest to God, I can say that I probably only died maybe 50 times the entire campaign, other than a certain boss that you will see later in this video. Other than that, though, the game, I will say, is not as challenging as I was expecting it to, and honestly, it's all about your patience with it. I hardly ever found a point where the game was trying to be brutally unfair to me, and it was more of just playing smart and not aggroing like 10 fucking people. And, you know, when you see a guy that you know is fast, wait for him to do his attack set, and then you can do your attack set, not his attack set, and I gotta do mine right as he's swinging too. Because some of these guys, they're waiting for that. Or there's some people that'll just straight up try to blow up on you or something like that. So it's a pretty interesting experience for everybody. Everybody has something different. That is another thing about campaigns that I didn't even write down, honestly. There's some quests to it, and I played Dark Souls 2, and I never really even ran into a quest really all that much. Maybe like helping get my blacksmith started, where I can upgrade and repair and stuff. But really, I didn't notice it. And even in this game, I had a hard time finding people too. And I was one of those people where I was afraid to actually go into a wrong or the right area. And I was like, oh, there's two paths. Well, I don't want to go over there, because what if that's the right path and I've just missed that entire section that has all these secrets and stuff, and I still miss stuff. So the game has a lot to offer you guys. But what I was finding myself in was that the game itself had a lot of filler. It had a lot of filler, because by the end of the game, I was exploring and I didn't even get everything, and I had about maybe 50-60 hours in the game, just like playing it before New Game Plus and stuff. But another thing about the campaign, you get multiple endings in this. You can have it basically allows you, when you get into New Game Plus, to figure out, okay, well, I got this ending, so I'm gonna go and get that ending and stuff. And it's pretty interesting. I got the true ending, the one you're supposed to get. I can't exactly say it without spoiling it, but there's other endings. There's even some endings that you don't know what to do. I remember my friend and I, we both found this. Excuse me. Oh my lord, I'm gonna die on you guys in the middle of the video. I remember there was this exact point where I found this item, and I could give it to somebody, but it would change. It would start this domino effect that would begin everything from this one ending in particular. And this actually could branch off into two endings if I did something else. But I was afraid to do it, because the way the person was sounding, it sounded like I was going to do something horrible. Like I was like gonna go and like become like the next horrible person, and I was like afraid of what it meant, because they always kind of sound a little they're not like straightforward with you. They kind of like the way they talk is like, at least for me, I didn't understand some of the things that they were saying. Just because I was like, so does that mean good or does that mean bad? Let's talk about some of the enemies before I move on to the next subject. Some of the enemies genuinely were pretty they have some of the most interesting enemies I have ever seen. The best way I can describe it to you guys before I show you this clip is literally, it is like somebody took a shit ton of acid and then had a horrible acid trip, and then right after they were done, just wrote down what they saw, because there's some enemies here that just kind of make you go, what kind of fucking mind do you have? And
Let's make sure I did everything I possibly could for each covenant before I go join Rosario's fingers.
based on my experience, the enemies were very straightforward. I hardly noticed any enemies that would like do anything to try and trick you. Based on stuff. The mimics are back. If you don't know what a mimic is, I'll let you find that out. I guess I should just say it, because if you don't know what a mimic is and you haven't seen any messages saying what a mimic is, it's basically this creature that tries to trick you into thinking it's something that you really want. Well, just a tip for all of you out there if you're about to start playing. Chain pointing towards you. Anyways, yeah, I never really noticed any enemies that were actively smarter than you. I just noticed that there was a lot of times where the game would have little things happen that kind of would irritate me. Like you'd be running past something or roll behind a wall, and the long fucking weapons that they're using just swing straight through the wall, smack you. You fall off the fucking cliff or something. And it does give you some frustrating times, I will admit, because I would get so angry at seeing it happen, because I'm just like, well, my sword just clashes into the wall. It just goes ting, ting. But yours just goes, knocks me off the cliff. But I think we can move on to the bosses and really how they work before I get into the multiplayer and the covenants. So with the bosses, honest to God, they did seem to try a lot more trickier bosses. These bosses weren't exactly the hardest, considering what Dark Souls 2 had. Dark Souls 2 had a lot more interesting ones. Like you had I can't remember his name. He flew. He's a knight. I'll pop it up here. Here where the open space is. But you could either try to parry him or use a cross the giant ballista on him, and there was a trick to him. And these guys, they also have tricks to him. Not all of them, but some of them. And it seems like in the beginning, they're very like sluggish, or the trick is once you get it down, once you know the trick is, they're not hard anymore. They just become like, okay, well, I just got to go smack this thing multiple times. And I don't remember the exact number of bosses in this game, but there's a lot of side bosses that if you're just not exploring, you might not even run into them. Some of these guys are a lot tougher to find, and some enemies, honestly, there was some enemies that might as well have been boss I call them mini bosses, because they were a lot tougher than you'd expect. You'll just run into them and then you kill them and then they're gone. Not all of them are as tough as I'm saying them to be, but some of these guys were actually a lot trickier to fight than others, as I was just saying that the enemies aren't as tricky as you think they are. Those guys, the mini bosses, they are a little tougher to experience with, just because some of them are just relentless and they don't give you any time to Estus, all that. But yeah, the bosses, until you get later in the game, I really didn't. There was a lot more tricks to them than I would have liked. Some of them were a lot cooler. Like I really enjoyed the Abyss Watchers. The Abyss Watchers were definitely a boss that I thought was a really cool idea. And when he popped out and all that shit, and what happens with him, it's a neat experience. That's where I think Dark Souls really stands out. But then if you go up to somebody else like the Cathedral of the Deep boss, you kind of just start getting into that like, you know, it's a cool idea, but honestly, like for a main boss, he wasn't as intimidating as I wanted him to. And then it just felt wasted, you know. The game is supposed to be really relentless and hard, but only starts doing that on two bosses and maybe the last two areas, and or no, probably a third, because there is one area that if you don't even bother with, you won't even know. Like you have to actually look for messages, or if you're the guy that finds it stuff. I don't talking about like secret passages and stuff. The illusionary walls were very well put in this game. I always have liked how the game felt like even after you're done and you felt like you've done 100% of everything, you still feel like there's that one illusionary wall that not one person has even found. Except I really do think that the people that rock the illusionary wall like findings are just smacking every wall that they can find without any legitimate reason to it. They just want to be the one to write illusionary wall ahead. Some of the areas were definitely very interesting. You would find areas that were literally toxic to you or would kill you because of curse. And as I said, that's more of your biggest problem is some of these enemies are in areas, like you'll go into some areas that you have to go through, that the areas with the enemies make it a little bit more difficult than just the enemies. The enemies themselves can be easily predicted as long as you're patient, and I never really had an issue with them. With the bosses, though, I will say this, though. There was about maybe 4 or 5 bosses, because there's a good amount of bosses in here that genuinely were pretty tough. They were usually the ones that were fast, but kept some serious beef behind their swings. You could totally get wrecked by them. And it was kind of out of the blue, too. Like, some of these bosses were not even main bosses, honestly. Some of the, like, there's 2 of them that, like, honestly, they weren't even main bosses, and they were probably one of the tougher ones. Everybody had a different one, in all honesty, for their toughest, but I think it's considered now that the guy that I had most trouble with.
She said, hey, something wrong with Papa. I said, what? She said, yeah. Yeah. I said, no. I said, it's cold outside. Yeah. Yeah. I said, no. She said, oh. I said, oh, man. Oh, man. She said, not the day. The building is on fire. Oh, we ain't gonna be no fire. No. My friend, no. My kids, no. The building is on fire. Oh, we ain't gonna be no fire. No. My friend, no. My kids, no. Ain't nobody got time for that. No. Time for that. No. Time for that. No. Not today.
Was the toughest. He is an optional boss, and if you guys run into him, good luck, guys. Big tip from that: stay away from the neck. You know, just stay away from him close quarters. You need to keep your distance and wait for him to outreach into you, not you go close to him, because he gets a lot tougher during that. Speaking about the campaign, this is more of the general game itself. What were some of the problems that I had with the game? Early on, when the game first came out, they had a huge issue with it seemed like bonfires, but it was more of your lighting. They had a huge issue where you'd crash. I easily would crash every single time my lighting was set anywhere above low. But if you ran it on low, you were fine. But honestly, like, if you really think about it, compared to most games, this game didn't have that big of an issue because it was an easy fix. And I'm not too big on graphics for me. As long as the game, you can see it. I don't like looking at like vomit while I'm playing, just because it does kind of get really weird looking at times. After bosses, we'll get into the multiplayer. Okay, so you can find covenants in this game, just like every other game. These covenants are, I did not count them, but I have Blade of the Dark Moon, Mound Makers, Rosario's Fingers, Watchdogs of Farron, Blue Sentinels, Aldrich's Faithful, Way of the Blue. So that's a good 7 covenants, and genuinely, so some of these guys you will struggle to find, honestly, like Mound Makers and Rosario's Fingers especially. Rosario's Fingers is a little bit easier, but Mound Makers, if you're looking to get into Mound Makers, I would highly recommend you look up how to, because if you're like me, you go everywhere, and even that didn't get me into it, just because Dark Souls tends to teach you hit everything, which you kind of can't do with this one. You have to randomly decide to trust an enemy you've been fighting for a really long time. But yeah, the what did I think about the covenants? Well, I'll go into the good parts first, just so that way I can get that out of the way. I think they're really cool. Coming from somebody that isn't crazy into Dark Souls, and I just played some Demon Souls with some friends of mine for this. Actually, the Federation, if we want to call ourselves that, I'm just gonna say that, the group that we post, the fucking people you hear in this goddamn channel, every single post I upload or someone else uploads. Goddamn. Okay. The good parts about it were you could either be a good guy, a bad guy, or you could even be these. They weren't exactly bad, but they were like territorial. And for instance, like Aldrich's Faithful and Watchdogs of Farron, they were just straight up like, if you were in the swamps, Watchdogs of Farron would be on you, and if you were embered, they would take you. That's the thing for this game is instead of like hollowing, you're embered, or you're just ash. You're essentially just ash, really, if you think about it, in armor, which I don't know how you're staying together, but just some wind just blows you away. With Watchdogs of Farron and Aldrich Faithful, they'll just if you're embered, they will just jump into your game and try to attack you. And at least Watchdogs of Farron, actually no, both of them were very consistent with just throwing at least 2 guys on you. And unless you killed that one guy fast enough for that second guy not to show up, it felt like they were very quick to like swarm you. And things like Rosario's Fingers and Mound Makers. Rosario's Fingers and Mound Makers. Mound Makers is a little more interesting, but I'll get onto that later. Mound Makers was and Rosario's Fingers were very good at tricking you, or not tricking you, invading you. They're the bad guys. Just imagine, they're the guys that are on you just because they want to kill you. They are only there to raid your world as a mad phantom or a dark spirit. That's another thing with the campaign. You don't even have to be online, and the game will throw enemies at you that are just... I should actually restate what I said about the enemies. The game itself, so you will run into these enemies, and these aren't like mini-boss enemies. These are like people AI. I don't know how they did it, but they play just like a player would. Like, some of these guys are like scared. Like, I would be fooled by these guys, honestly, because they play like players the way they fight, and they look like players. They might as well just be players, but they're not. They're scripted to attack you at this exact point, and I know that because I have gotten a New Game Plus. I've beaten the game, New Game Plus, basically 75% of the way through again, and I've made a new character. So they are scripted to attack you at this exact point, and they have the same name and everything, but they are very good. Like, I had a guy who In the beginning, he was tough, but New Game Plus, I wrecked him. New Game Plus, I'll get into in a little bit, but back to the Covenants. They will invade you if you're embered, and they, I think they have to be in the same area as you. There was no real indicator of how they invade you. It's just you're embered, and you're going to get invaded. We got Blade of the Dark Moon and Blue Sentinels. They are basically the protectors of Way of the Blue. Way of the Blue is oh, did I actually forget that? Covenants, Warriors of Sunlight, Sun Bros. I can't believe out of praise the sun, and I'm a fucking little douche hiding in the dark because I didn't praise the sun. Anyways, something, and I'm holding this to my face because this is my microphone and I need it. Okay, don't question me. So yeah, we got Sun Bros. Sun Bros and Way of the Blue are a little bit more PvE. I honestly, Way of the Blue, I think Way of the Blue just basically is there so that way you don't get invaded alone. Blade of the Darkman and Blue Sentinels are there specifically to protect the Way of the Blue. So if you get invaded by a Rosario's Fingers, Blade of the Dark Moon guy might just appear out of nowhere and try to save you. And then it's a 2v1 or a 2v2. And these fights can get pretty crazy, honestly. I have a buddy of mine who he almost got into like a 6 people fight, like a mosh. And the most I've ever gotten is like a 4 people, 5 people. But that's because you can have little items that like make you attract more people into your game to attack you. That is one cool thing about it. They kept the white branches, and what these will do is you can hide and disguise yourself. And my friend and I will.
I heard him summon himself.
Yeah, well, it says that he came. Are you just gonna sit like that?
Wait.
Set up like, yeah.
That's not bad. I glow though. I hate that I'm glowing.
I hate that I'm smoldering and glowing.
This guy's gonna take. Wait, hang on. Wait, God. Where is he?
He's doing what we're doing. Dost thou see him? No.
The king's chair. Oh, he's coming. He's coming. The king's chair is always watchful.
No, he's coming. He's coming.
He knows nothing.
Oh.
Wait, no.
I sense.
No, he doesn't know it. He doesn't know it. Look, he's an idiot.
Move! Get to the corners. Get to the corners. When he shows up again, we'll attack him.
No. Bring it on, bitch. Here you go. Switch spaces.
Well, I look completely out of place. I'm like clipping through the stairs and everything.
A little bit more towards the pillar. Yeah, good.
Let me know if he's coming. I'm trying to like really straighten this.
Stop. He knows.
Ah! Surprise! We don't respect your kind around here.
Nay! Ooh. Probably want to get a little bit of that fire protection.
Sorry guys for the technical difficulties. I didn't charge the camera before I made this review. So, plugged in now. Still gonna talk about it. I'm gonna go over just real fast. Way of the Blue is protected by the Blue Sentinels and the Blade of the Dark Moon. You get invaded, Blade of the Dark Moon or a Blue Sentinel will come and help you out. It actually can get pretty cool. Let's talk about the Sunbros really fast. Sunbros are your PvE guys. You'll randomly see their signs down that are just willing to help you throughout an area or a boss. These guys are pretty cool. But they can still PvP you. Things like that will happen. They're not just strictly PvE good guys. Even any group can actually just invade you just to invade you, but really their purpose is to help you, is what I've noticed. That brings me to the bad parts about the Covenants system. I have not been summoned one goddamn time as this, and I have what, like 70 something hours in this game more. I wanted to, okay, so let me tell you my track record with the Covenant system right now. So I started in the game wanting to be a Blue Sentinel. As soon as I found him, like I didn't miss him or anything, but I found him. So then I became a Blue Sentinel, wore that while I was embered all the time. Didn't get summoned once. Then I eventually got to the area where you can get Blade of the Dark Moon, and I was like, well, you know, I've been wearing this thing all the goddamn time, and sometimes you'd see it flash. I don't know if that means that I can be summoned and I'm just not doing something for it. So I decided that I was going to go and be a Blade of the Dark Moon. Thought maybe, you know, maybe it's Blue Sentinel's kind of fucked up right now. Like, they need to do something or whatever. You know, I couldn't go and help somebody because I wanted to be like the Jedi of the game, you know, help people. And that didn't happen. So I ended up going into it with Blade of the Dark Moon. Didn't get summoned at all. And I kept that until New Game Plus. Okay, I kept wearing that until New Game Plus. And then after New Game Plus, I decided, screw it, I'm going to go be a Rosaria's Fingers and Aldrich Faithful. Luckily, I got Aldrich Faithful before Rosaria's Fingers, or else I couldn't even join any of the others. But even then, even in New Game Plus, I still haven't been summoned. It's like part of your game is missing for some people. And as Aldrich Faithful, I have some friends that get summoned all the time. Like, I have a buddy of mine who was Watch Dogs of Farron for such a long time, got summoned all the time. Literally, I remember he would always talk about, oh, you probably have a lot of embers if you PvP, because he had a lot, but I had like 12 because I didn't PvP at all. I just kept playing the campaign, and I ended up beating the game before him. But yeah, the Covenant system has a weird thing with connecting. I don't know if I'm missing something, but I'm embered and I'm wearing the Covenant. Like, that's what it seems to be all you need, and it's still telling you you can't. I don't know. So to me, the Covenant system seems cool, but I'm hoping that later on throughout what they go through with patches, maybe that'll become a thing. Other than that, though, you don't have to be in a Covenant to do multiplayer. Don't get me wrong. You can just be a straight up bastard and try to invade somebody. That's we'll talk about. It's more of a gripe, I'll just say, than really a fault of the game. It's really just how, because I remember back in the day when I played Dark Souls 2, when you invaded somebody, you didn't Estus. There seems to be a lot of Estus people here. Like, I have, it's almost like I've just started betting that you will use your Estus on me in a fight, because for some reason people forgot about it, or there's just a bunch of new people that don't know about it. It's just, you can do it, you know, do what you want because a pirate is free, but by God, man, I really was expecting people to be a little bit more respectful and honorable about it. But multiplayer, you can also not invade people, but you can help your friends in any section of the game other than Aldrich's castle wall, or the wall or whatever. It's the first section of the game. Not the tutorial before you get to your main hub, which will be your Firelink Shrine. It'll be the wall after you get to Firelink Shrine. That area is yours to complete. You do not have any help from that. That is up to you. But after that, you can basically call in a friend and do co-op all the way through if you really wanted to. I still really wish, though, that if you called for help, the game would get a little bit tougher, or maybe have a setting where co-op is allowed and the game just gets a lot harder. I'd rather have that just because I personally had more fun playing with a friend than playing by myself. But man, I gotta tell you, the game itself was it is the first single player / multiplayer. I beat it myself. Fuck that. That I have beaten since I was a kid, man. I have had the biggest trouble with getting into a game. Witcher 3 is a great game. I can't beat it. It's probably a combination of the game kept me interested while playing, and Witcher 3 was fun. It gives you so much stuff to do. It's an amazing game. But when you give me so much stuff to do, I want to do it all. And after I've played for 3 hours straight and I still haven't done anything, technically, I've just scratched the surface of this giant mound of cake that you've thrown in front of me. I'm not going to be, I'll just slowly get bored, man. It's like, that's the best analogy I could throw at it. It's like a giant freaking mountain of cake and you want to eat it all, but you get through a certain point and you're just like, it tastes good, but I'm bored. I'm bored of chewing. So I'm going to stop eating this mountain of cake because I don't want it. And that cake better be chocolate with maybe some different kind of frosting, but it better be chocolate. God help you. The bosses, I've already talked about them. New Game Plus, we'll touch on that a little bit before we end this. New Game Plus was very disappointing to me. I was not really, the game itself did not feel anywhere near challenging. I actually faced the hardest boss in the game on New Game Plus, and I beat him. I think it took me like 44 minutes or whatever, but to me, it wasn't. The best way to describe it to you guys is I went into it thinking, okay, the game's gonna get harder, and the bosses and everything. It wasn't hard for me. I was embered from the start of the game again, all the way through until I got to the Nameless King, which is the hardest boss in the game, by the way. So that'll give you an idea. I didn't die once through that, okay? It wasn't anything about it seems like their health is a little bit more, like they get a little bit more health, and maybe they hit a little bit harder, but really at that point, I was beefy. I was loaded, dude. I could not have been beaten. Then again, I did end up, ironically, maxing out the sword that I guess a lot of people have started using because it's very strong and fast, which is the Dark Sword, by the way. I didn't know it was actually the strongest sword, or one of the stronger swords you can use that's a one-hander. But started doing that. New Game Plus, though, I do like that it compensates you in the game with your items. It has some different items. In the very beginning of the game, I found a ring that I've never found before. It gave me like resistance to what is it? Poison, like dark. It gave me fire, like all that stuff. Like gave me like 4 resistances to things, and I was like, this is a ring that I'm gonna get in the beginning. Okay, this is New Game Plus for sure. But overall, my experience with the game was pretty good. One of the bigger faults about the game, in my opinion, that I only had, ironically, compared to my friends, was that sometimes the game's auto-lock system, where you would lock onto a guy and you'd go out to swing at him and your camera would track him, so that way you don't have to worry about it. You just have to worry about rolling and hitting and all that stuff. Ironically, I had some issues with that, but only on certain enemies, like the Nameless King, who makes sudden movements that are like lightning fast, and then they strike you, because there was some times where it would just like I'd be watching him and he'd just dart around me really fast, and I would all of a sudden my camera stopped locking, and I'd be like, wait, what? And I get stabbed in the back or something like that, which shouldn't happen. But that's just me. All my friends are saying that for them it's never been that big of an issue. They haven't had anything like that. So I guess I'm the only one. But that's still, if I experienced it, I guarantee you someone else has. But yeah, the game, man, it had a decent start. When it released, there wasn't too many issues that I was finding, at least. And I was trying to actually break the game a few points. But the game itself, man, it was a good send off. The only thing other than the lock-on system that bothered me, and the covenant system bothered me a little bit less, but it was they didn't really try to do anything crazy with it other than the bosses being a little bit weaker, but they have a trick to them, or else they're just invincible. But for me, the game just felt like Dark Souls was Dark Souls, like Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, you know. It didn't feel like it was like, hey, if it ain't broken, don't fix it kind of thing. So, you know, I can't really throw it at them for that, just because at least they're not like Call of Duty. You know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I'll just go ahead and say it. If you're looking for a good single player game with some light multiplayer to it, by all means, guys, go ahead and grab it. It is a game though that I'll just say it. Those memes about it being like your hair tearing out, frustrating, that's not a lie. For some people just I guess they can't they don't get it yet with the combat system, but you will. Just you got to think about it. You got to just be smart. When you get into the game, if you rage easy, I don't know if you want it. But you know, the game itself is a good game. It honestly is. It is a good way to end the Dark Souls series. From what I know, it's the last one, but it's a good one. I'm not gonna rate it. It's a good game. So if I guess like it's like 8 out of 10 kind of stuff. But yeah, it's definitely something that you want to try out. If you're bored, you know, you have the money to throw at it, by all means do it. Or you could, you know, go that the lower route, which is not exactly the lower route, but it's a cheaper route, which is the $40 Ratchet and Clank. And yes, I am throwing that out there because that is also a single player game. Both of them are doing great right now, and I hope to do a Ratchet and Clank review either with the group or by myself when we get it done. Don't know when that's gonna be. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next one. Okay. Goodbye.